to that appointment, my life was endangered. And I was tortured. My son and I were both tortured separately in the same way. And then when I went to the next visit to see him, I saw the evidence of torture on his body. He had blotchy marks all over his, all over the side of his face or his arm. I think it was his arm. And I had also had something happen to me that caused a blotchy pigmentation all the way up one side of my arm and down the other. And when I got back to Wenatchee after being out of Wenatchee and having to be in that Seattle, Bainbridge Island, Vancouver area for a while, I was basically tortured with technology that changed the pigmentation on my skin. At first I had thought that it was something, a poison that I had received, which basically ruined my voice, my singing voice. And I thought that that was an effect, a side effect from that. But I have seen that same kind of blotchy appearance and change of pigmentation on my mom, and she still has it on her face right now, and on my dad, and it's not a natural hereditary thing at all. It's something that has occurred to me at other times as well after I've been targeted for torture by technology. So the United States was doing this really sick thing more than once of assaulting me in some form and leaving marks. I mean, marks that they could pass off as something else, but leaving marks. And then doing the same thing to my son, and then they wanted us to see each other at our visits and have me see that what had been done to me was also done to my child. And that occurred on more than one occasion. The United States was torturing us in tandem, and then wanting to traumatize me by seeing what they had done to my son and feel helpless and know that I was powerless to do anything about it. And when I was told that I had to go to this psychological appointment, I was told it was basically the end of the line. And Michelle Erickson said, if you don't go to this one, she said, we will not pay for another one, and we will not schedule another one. And she said, and then you won't have your psych eval done, and you will lose your son because you didn't comply with the court order. This is after they stalled for a year and a half. I was threatened by Michelle Erickson. And she told me, I said, basically the state, for any appointment like that that's required through a court order, as I've said before, they're required to pay for and arrange your transportation to and from the appointment and any kind of hotel or lodging costs. And what she did is when I called to find out what my transportation arrangements were and about my hotel, I was told by Michelle Erickson that we are not going to pay for your transportation and we don't have enough time to make arrangements. And then she said, we are also not paying for any hotel. She said, so if you go to this appointment, you're on your own. I said, what do you mean I'm on my own? I said, I don't have any money. I've been forced into homelessness since I've been back in Wenatchee. And I can't get work. You know what my position is, and you're supposed to. You're forced. I mean, you know that I have to comply with this court order, and you're required to provide the transportation and the lodging. And this is going from Wenatchee, Washington to Vancouver, Washington, which is hours away. They're hours apart. I mean, you have to go over a freeway, you have to go over mountain passes, and it's hours of driving. And I was being told that I had to go across a mountain pass several hundreds of miles from Wenatchee, Washington, all the way to Vancouver, Washington. And I had to figure out how I was doing that myself. with no money. And the threat was that you go with nothing and you show up at that appointment with Lucretia Krebs, or you lose your son, because we will not schedule or reschedule another appointment for you. That was Michelle Erickson. The same Michelle Erickson, by the way, that Judge Alicia Nakata is so interested in protecting. And Judge Alicia Nakata is a criminal. And I will get into what Judge Alicia Nakata has done in a day or two, because she's committed crimes. And my guess is that she's probably the person who smokes cocaine, that snorts it. Because I had a couple people, there are judges, I think other judges that may be doing things, but after seeing some things that Nakata did, and how she batted her eyes at my Colombian boyfriend, was willing to be nice as long as I was with him, I think she's a cokehead. And, so when Michelle Erickson told me that the state of Washington was not going to pay for my transportation, they basically told me I had to hitchhike. And that's what I asked. I said, you're telling me that I have to just hitchhike or find a way to get over there? She said, it doesn't matter how you do it, you have to get over there. They left me a couple of days to be over there and said that they would not reschedule. I mean, they had 2 weeks to plan for transportation and hotel, and then they told me a couple of days ahead of the appointment when I called to find out what it was. That's when they told me that they hadn't made those arrangements, and they were not going to. So basically, when we think about who was liable for the damages that I incurred while being assaulted and unsafe travel, Michelle Erickson is at the top of the list. She's at the top of the list with interfering with my transportation arrangements from the very start. And at the close of the case, she filed a restraining order against me, and she lied in that restraining order. And I had evidence to show that she lied, but I was basically being tortured by the U.S. It's to be prevented from contesting that in court, because when I'm being tortured, when any person is tortured, you can't exactly function like a normal person when you're forced into homelessness and then tortured at the same time. So I was basically set up to be assaulted. My guess is that these women that I took this poison cigarette from are connected to Michelle Erickson, the Seattle FBI, and or the state of Washington. I have no doubt. Because nobody would tell me to hitchhike and figure out how to go hundreds of miles and across a mountain pass on my own within a day or two in the middle of the week when most people are working. Nobody would do that unless they're deliberately trying to set you up to be harmed. Which island did Kate Middleton have her honeymoon on again?